Elena Vance pressed the phone so hard against her ear that her knuckles whitened. On the other end, the architect's voice sounded distant, almost unreal, as if he were speaking through a water-filled tunnel. "We found something in the walls, ma'am. Something that, well, I think you need to see it for yourself." The smell of burnt coffee hung heavy in the air of her kitchen apartment in Oakhaven. Elena looked out the window, the same ritual she'd performed every morning for 18 years, as if expecting to see her sister, Carmen, walking down the street, carrying that brown leather bag and smiling with her eyes. But Carmen never came home after that visit to the Convent of St. Hope in August 1990. "What kind of something?" Elena asked, though a part of her already knew she didn't want to hear the answer. The architect hesitated. "It's best if you come here. We're renovating the East Wing. We found, well, we found a suitcase hidden inside the wall." Elena dropped the phone. The sound echoed through the empty kitchen like a gunshot. 18 years. 18 years since Carmen had vanished without a trace, and now a suitcase inside the wall of a convent, a place that was supposed to be sacred. Her hands trembled as she started the car. The drive to the convent was all too familiar. She'd made this journey hundreds of times in the first few years after Carmen's disappearance, pleading with the nuns for answers that never came. Sister Magdalene always greeted her with the same pious smile and the same empty words. "Your sister left of her own accord, my child. Sometimes God calls people to paths we don't understand. The police took it, but ma'am," the architect moved closer, lowering his voice, "there's something I didn't tell them, something I found before I called them." Elena felt her heart quicken. "What?" The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, damp-stained notebook. This was inside the suitcase. "It looks like a diary." Elena reached for it, but hesitated. To touch that notebook meant accepting the truth. It meant that Carmen hadn't simply left for a new life. It meant that she had died there, in that place that was supposed to be sacred. With trembling fingers, Elena opened the notebook. Carmen's familiar handwriting leaped from the page like a ghost. "August 15th, 1990. The day has arrived. Sister Magdalene assured me that I will find the peace I seek here. She says the purification ritual will free me from the sin I carry. She says the baby will be born blessed. But there's something in her eyes, something that makes me question if I've come to the right place." Elena felt tears burn her eyes. Purification ritual? What kind of ritual? She turned the page with shaking hands. "August 16th. They won't let me leave. They say it's for my own protection, that the outside world is too dangerous for someone in my condition. But the other women here, they have scars. Scars they can't explain. One of them, Esperanza, told me about the nighttime ceremonies, about what they do with the babies born here. My God, Elena, if you're reading this." The following page was stained with dried blood. Elena carefully turned it over and found only a hastily scribbled phrase. "They know I know. They're taking me tonight. If you find me, look in the cellar. Look for the door that shouldn't exist." Elena closed the notebook and looked at the architect. "Is there a cellar in this convent?" The man shook his head. "Not on the official blueprints, but," he hesitated, "there are rumors. My workers say they hear sounds from below, footsteps, sometimes crying. Take me there." "Ma'am, I don't think that's a good idea. We should wait for the police." Elena gripped the architect's arm. "My sister died in this place. My niece or nephew died here. And you want me to wait?" Her voice echoed down the hallway, carrying 18 years of pain and rage. "Take me to the cellar. Now." The man guided her through the convent's labyrinthine corridors. Elena noticed details she'd never seen before. The worn stones of the floor, etched in strange patterns, as if people had walked the same routes for centuries. Crucifixes hung haphazardly, some upside down. And the smell? That cloying, organic scent that seemed to grow stronger with each step. They descended a narrow staircase that Elena had assumed was merely decorative. At the bottom, a heavy wooden door, secured with an ancient lockpad. The architect produced a crowbar from his toolbox. "We found this door yesterday," he explained as he forced the lock. "It wasn't in the original renovation plans." The door creaked open. The sound echoed down the hallway like a scream of agony. A nauseating smell rose from the depths. Incense mixed with decay, fear, and something Elena couldn't identify, but that brought to mind old blood. Elena switched on her phone's flashlight and began to descend. Each step took her deeper into the darkness, the temperature gradually dropping. Their breaths became visible in the frigid air, small puffs of vapor dancing in the weak light. The cellar was larger than she expected. Corridors stretched in several directions, all carved directly into the rock. The walls were covered in strange symbols, not Christian, but something older, more primal. Elena followed the main corridor, her footsteps echoing like heartbeats. That's when she saw it. Niches carved into the walls, hundreds of them. And inside each niche, small skeletons carefully arranged. Babies. All babies. Elena fell to her knees. Her phone slipped from her hand and rolled across the floor, the light spinning wildly and creating dancing shadows that made the tiny skeletons seem to move. She vomited. The sound echoed through the subterranean crypt. "My God," she whispered. "My God, what did you do?" A voice made her turn. Sister Magdalena stood at the end of the corridor, but something was different. Her clothing was no longer the traditional habit, but a dark robe covered with the symbols Elena had seen on the walls. Behind her, other hooded figures materialized from the darkness. "Elena," Sister Magdalena said softly, "you've always been persistent, just like Carmen." Elena slowly rose, searching for her phone. "Where is she? Where is my sister?" Carmen was here. Sister Magdalena approached, her steps echoing in the silence. "She came to us carrying new life, life that needed to be purified. You killed her. We liberated her." The nun's voice was hypnotic, almost musical. "Just as we liberated so many others. Just as we liberated her children so they could join something greater." Elena recoiled, but there were other hooded figures behind her now. She was surrounded. "You're insane. You're murderers." "We are guardians." Sister Magdalena stopped directly in front of Elena. "Guardians of a truth that predates Christianity. This land is sacred, Elena. Sacred to something far older than your Jesus." Elena felt something sharp press against her back. A knife. "What do you want from me? You've seen too much. You know too much. But we can offer you the same choice we offered Carmen." Sister Magdalena smiled, and Elena saw that her teeth were stained with something dark. "You can join us. You can become part of something eternal." "Never. Then you will follow the same path as your sister." Elena felt the blade pierce her skin slightly. A drop of blood trickled down her back. She closed her eyes, thinking of Carmen, of the baby that was never born, of the hundreds of babies whose bones filled those walls. And then she heard it. Footsteps running up the stairs, voices shouting. The police had arrived. "Let her go." The detective's voice echoed through the cellar. "We're surrounded. There's nowhere to run." What followed was chaos. The hooded figures scattered through the dark corridors. Elena was shoved against the wall, her head striking the stone. Through the pain and confusion, she saw Sister Magdalena disappear into one of the side tunnels, her dark robe blending with the shadows. The police found her bleeding and in shock. Elena told them about the skeletons, about Carmen's diary, about the cult operating under the guise of a convent. But when they returned to investigate further, they discovered that the tunnels stretched for miles beneath the mountain, connecting to a network of natural caves. Sister Magdalena and her followers had vanished. In the following days, the investigation revealed decades of horror. Vulnerable women lured to the convent under promises of spiritual help. Babies born into ritual and sacrificed to feed a twisted belief in pre-Christian gods. Falsified records, covered up deaths, a conspiracy spanning generations. Elena Vance found Carmen's body in one of the deepest chambers. She lay on a stone slab, her hands crossed over her chest, preserved by the cold temperature and lack of oxygen. Beside her, the tiny bones that were once her baby. Carmen had managed to give birth before she died, but the child hadn't survived long. The funeral was small, private. Elena buried Carmen and the baby side by side, placing a small wooden cross she had carved herself. She didn't pray. She couldn't pray anymore to a God who had allowed this to happen. Instead, she spoke to Carmen, promising she would always search for the truth, just as her sister had asked. But the nights were different now. Elena woke up hearing voices, not the voices of the dead, but the voices of the living. Other women who had disappeared over the years, other families who had never known the truth. She started investigating, gathering evidence, tracing connections. Because Sister Magdalena hadn't died at the convent. The underground tunnels led to other places, other towns, other countries. The cult was larger than anyone had imagined. And some of the women who had disappeared might still be alive, trapped in other cellars, in other convents, in other prisons disguised as holy places. Elena turned her house into an investigation center. Walls covered with maps, photographs, documents. She received calls from desperate families, from women who had escaped, from police officers who had found similar evidence elsewhere. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. And then, 6 months after what happened at the convent, Elena received a letter. There was no return address, but she recognized the handwriting immediately. It was the same script she had seen in the convent's falsified records. Elena, you have made your choice, but our work continues. There are other places, other women, other children awaiting purification. You can hunt us, but you will never find us all. We are older than your civilization. We are eternal. Elena crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash. But that night she couldn't sleep. Every shadow seemed to hide a hooded figure. Every noise made her think of underground footsteps. In the morning, she picked up the phone and called the detective who had led the convent investigation. I need your help, she said. I need to find other places like that. I need to find other women like Carmen. Miss Vance, the detective replied, this could be dangerous. These people killed my sister and my nephew, Elena interrupted. They killed hundreds of babies, and they will continue to kill unless someone stops them. And you think you can stop them? Elena looked at the photograph of Carmen she kept on her desk. Carmen smiling, pregnant, full of hope. I have to try. The following months were a race against time. Elena traveled throughout Europe, following leads, talking to survivors, mapping the network of convents and religious institutions that served as a facade for the cult. She discovered that the organization had existed for centuries, adapting to the times, changing its identity, but never changing its fundamental goals. In every place she visited, Elena found the same evidence: missing women, sacrificed babies, underground tunnels, ancient symbols. But she also found something else: other people like her, families who had lost loved ones, investigators who had stumbled upon the truth and been silenced. It was in a small convent in Ireland that Elena finally found Sister Magdalena again. She was using a different name, leading a community of women in recovery. But Elena recognized the eyes immediately. Those eyes that had watched Carmen die. Elena didn't go alone this time. She had learned her lesson. She brought with her a team of investigators, journalists, and international police officers. They surrounded the convent at dawn when the cult was performing one of its rituals. What they found was worse than anyone had imagined. Dozens of women held captive, some for years. Babies born in captivity, raised as offerings for the cult's rituals. And at the center of it all, Sister Magdalena conducting a ceremony that seemed to have come out of a nightmare. The battle was brutal. Cult members fought like cornered animals, using knives and ritual objects as weapons. Elena saw people she knew, women who had disappeared years before, now converted into fanatical followers. She understood that the cult didn't just kill its victims, it transformed them. Sister Magdalena tried to escape through the underground tunnels, but this time there was no way out. Elena cornered her in a ritual chamber, surrounded by blood-stained altars and symbols carved into the living stone. "You don't understand," Sister Magdalena said, backing toward the altar. "You can't destroy something that has existed for millennia. We are part of human nature. We are what you become when you need to believe in something greater than yourselves." "You are murderers," replied Elena, approaching slowly. "You killed my sister. You killed my nephew. You killed hundreds of innocent babies. We offer transcendence." Sister Magdalena screamed. "We offer purpose. These women came to us empty, lost, searching for meaning. We gave them something to live for, something to die for." Elena stopped right in front of the woman who had haunted her nightmares for months. Carmen didn't want transcendence. She wanted help. She wanted a safe place to have her baby, and you killed her. Carmen chose to stay. She chose to become part of something eternal. Carmen was murdered, just like all the others. Sister Magdalena smiled, and Elena saw that her teeth were stained with fresh blood. "You think you can stop me? You think you can stop all of us? We are like a hydra, Elena. Cut off one head and two grow in its place." Elena drew the weapon she had learned to use during the months of investigation. "Maybe, but at least I can stop you from hurting anyone else." "You don't have the courage." Elena thought of Carmen. She thought of the baby who never had a chance to grow. She thought of all the women who had died in those dark tunnels, seeking hope and finding only horror. "You're right," Elena said. "I don't have the courage to kill you, but I do have the courage to make sure you pay for everything you've done." The police found Elena holding Sister Magdalena to the ground, the gun pointed at the woman's head. Magdalena was alive, but she knew her arrest meant the end of her cult, at least this version of it. The trial lasted months. Elena testified, telling Carmen's story, describing what she had found in the underground tunnels. Other survivors testified as well, women who had been held captive, who had seen their babies die in gruesome rituals. Sister Magdalena was sentenced to life imprisonment. Dozens of other cult members were arrested. The convents were shut down, the tunnels sealed. But Elena knew the victory was only partial. The cult had operated for centuries. It wouldn't be destroyed completely by a single investigation. Still, she had found a kind of peace. Carmen had been properly buried. Her story had been told. And other women had been saved. Women who might have followed the same path as Carmen if Elena hadn't acted. Elena returned to Oakhaven, but not to the same life. She created an organization dedicated to helping families of missing persons, especially women who had been lured into extremist religious groups. She kept in touch with international investigators, tracking leads on other cults, other predators who disguised themselves as holy figures. Sometimes, on quiet nights, Elena still heard the voices from the underground tunnels, but now she understood that it wasn't the dead who haunted her, it was the living. The women who still needed help, the families who were still searching for answers, the children who were still at risk. Elena kept Carmen's diary in a special box, along with photographs and letters. But occasionally, she would open it and reread her sister's last words. "If they find me, look for the truth. Always look for the truth." And if you're following this story, if it touched something in you, maybe it's because you recognize that the truth is something we all need to seek, not just Elena. If you want to keep following stories like this, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, because there are other truths hidden out there, other stories that need to be told, other people who need to be remembered. Elena knew Carmen would be proud. Her sister had asked her to look for the truth, and Elena had done exactly that. More than that, She had found a way to transform her grief into purpose, her anger into action. A few years later, Elena received a letter from a young woman named Anna. Anna had read about the convent case in the newspapers and wanted to tell her own story. She had escaped a similar religious group in Argentina, but her sister was still trapped there. Elena picked up the phone and called Anna. "Tell me everything," she said. "We're going to find your sister." And so the work continued. For every cult that was exposed, for every woman who was saved, Elena felt she was honoring Carmen's memory. She could never bring her sister back, never give life to the baby who died before birth. But she could ensure that other families wouldn't go through the same horror. In the most difficult moments, when the investigation seemed impossible, when the predators seemed always to be one step ahead, Elena would return to the cemetery where Carmen was buried. She would sit beside the headstone and talk to her sister, telling her about the women who had been saved, about the babies who had grown up safely thanks to the work she was doing. "You were right, Carmen," Elena would whisper. "The truth is worth it, even when it hurts, even when it seems impossible to find. The truth is always worth it." And as the wind blew through the cemetery trees, Elena swore she could hear Carmen's voice answering, "Keep searching, sister. Keep searching for the truth." Elena stood up, wiped the tears from her eyes, and went back home. There was work to do. There were other women like Carmen waiting for help. There were other families searching for answers. And Elena would be there for them, always searching for the truth, always remembering that even in the darkest places, there's always hope that the light can break through. The convent was demolished the following year. In its place, they built a memorial to the victims, a small plaza with a garden where families could come to remember and to heal. Elena visited the site occasionally, not to grieve, but to remember that even the deepest horrors can be transformed into something beautiful, something that honors the memory of those who are gone. And when she looked at the garden, where flowers grew where there had once been only death and darkness, Elena knew that Carmen would be happy. Her sister had always believed in the possibility of redemption, in the human capacity to transform pain into love, trauma into healing. The truth had been found, justice had been served, and Carmen's memory lived not only in the pain of her death, but in the beauty of all that her death had inspired Elena to do. That was true transcendence, not the ritual death sought by the cult, but the life dedicated to protecting others, to transforming suffering into service, to ensuring that love is always stronger than fear. Elena smiled, gently touched Carmen's headstone one last time, and walked toward the future, knowing that she carried her sister not as a burden, but a light that would guide her every step from then on.